You walk into a room you have never been in before. A cafe, a friend's new flat, a waiting room, it does not matter which one. And in the first second, before you have thought anything at all, something in you says, I have been here. Not the street, not a place like this one. This room, the corner, the step by the door, the way the light comes across the wall. You have never been in this building in your life. Almost everybody gets this. About 2 out of every 3 people, and that number comes from a review of 41 separate studies, so it is not a guess. Most of us have had it 10 or 20 times, told a friend about it, laughed, moved on, and probably never once stopped and asked what actually happened in there. Because it goes as fast as it comes, a few seconds, 30 at the very most. By the time you have turned to your friend and said the words out loud, it is already gone, and you are standing in a room you do not recognize at all, feeling slightly stupid. 3 things make it more likely, and you already know all 3 from your own life. Being tired, being stressed, and traveling. Hold on to that last one because everybody explains it the same way, everybody explains it wrongly, and halfway through this video you are going to see exactly why. But here is the bit nobody thinks about. The strange part is not that the room felt familiar. Lots of things feel familiar. The strange part is what your head was doing underneath that feeling, in the same second, without you asking it to. You knew it was false the whole time it was happening. Think about that. You were not fooled for even 1 second. Your body was handing you a complete physical certainty that you had been in that room before, and at the exact same moment your mind was calmly telling you that you had not. Both. At once. And that one detail kills the obvious answer before we even start. This is not a false memory. A false memory does not feel like that. A false memory feels exactly like a real one, which is the whole reason false memories are dangerous. So something in your head is recognizing something. It is confident. It is specific. It is strong enough to physically stop you walking. And it is recognizing something that is not the room. The whole question of this video is what it actually recognized. Try to make it happen right now. Sit somewhere unfamiliar, concentrate, and produce the feeling on purpose. You cannot. Nobody can. In the entire history of the experience, no one has ever been able to summon it on demand. Which is why science was late to this by about a century. You cannot schedule it. It lasts seconds. It leaves no trace to measure afterwards, and the only evidence you get is somebody telling you what they felt, which is the weakest kind of data there is. For a long time, it sat in the same drawer as ghosts. So the question was not whether the feeling was real. Everybody knew it was real. Most people in the room had had it. The question was how you build an experiment around something that refuses to show up when you are watching. 2 doors eventually opened. The first was medical, a group of people for whom the feeling is not random at all, but arrives on a schedule in a hospital where it can be watched. The second was a trick, a way to build a weak, safe version of it inside a laboratory, in people with nothing wrong with them. Both are coming. But for the 100 years before those doors opened, the space was filled by explanations that cost nothing to produce and could not be tested by anybody. And most of them are still the first thing people say. So it is worth clearing them out properly, one at a time, because every wrong answer here is wrong in an interesting way, and 2 of them are wrong in a way that points directly at the right one. The most popular answer for most of human history is that you lived before. That the doorway is a leak from an earlier life, and the reason you cannot place it is that the person who stood there was not you. It is not a past life. It is not a dream you forgot, although that is the best of the wrong answers and we will come back to it. It is not one eye delivering the picture a half second later than the other, which was a genuine scientific proposal for a while and does not survive meeting anybody with one eye. And it is not a glitch in a simulation, although the film that made that idea famous got something genuinely right, and we are going to end on it. The forgotten dream answer deserves better than the rest, because it is pointing at the right shape of explanation. You did see something before. You cannot retrieve it. The feeling is what is left behind. The problem is that it is too small to be the answer. It happens to people who never recall dreams at all. It has been produced in laboratories on demand in the middle of the afternoon in subjects who were not asleep at any point in the experiment. Dreams can feed it. Dreams are not the machine. Here is the thing you already own, that you use several times a week, and that you have never once thought of as strange. A face in a crowd. You know that face. You are certain. You cannot produce a name, a place, or a single fact about the person attached to it. That is two different systems, and they are genuinely separate pieces of machinery. One answers a single question, have I encountered this before, yes or no? The other does the expensive work of pulling the file, where, when, who, what happened next. The first is fast and cheap, the second is slow and fails often. And you have met the opposite failure too. The word is there. You can feel the shape of it. You know how many syllables it has. You know it starts with a hard sound, and it will not come. You will get it at 2 in the morning. That is the same two systems failing in the other direction. You have proof the file exists. You can feel its edges, and the contents will not load. Nobody finds that supernatural. Nobody thinks a forgotten word means they lived before. It is the identical machinery, and we only call it eerie when it runs the other way round. So let the fast one fire alone. Full strength, no file attached, no name, no place, nothing behind it at all. A pure, contentless certainty that this has been encountered before, arriving in a room your eyes are seeing for the first time in your life, that is not a theory of what déjà vu might be. That is a description of what it is. The hardest evidence does not come from people like you. It comes from an operating theater, from a patient who is awake, whose skull is open, and who is being asked to describe what they feel while a surgeon touches a wire to the surface of their brain. The route to that room runs through epilepsy. In one particular kind, seizures begin in the temporal lobe, and many patients get a warning first, a strange, stereotyped experience in the seconds before it starts. For a lot of them, that warning is déjà vu. The feeling you get in a doorway is, for them, a scheduled event with a medical name. ASIN, which gives surgeons mapping a brain before an operation, an unusual opportunity. They are already stimulating tissue and asking the patient what happened. And sometimes what the patient reports is that they have suddenly, completely been here before. It was first recorded in the 1960s and pinned down properly by French teens in the 1990s and 2000s. Stimulate a small patch of cortex at the front of the memory system, the rhinal cortex, and déjà vu appears. Not a memory, not a dream. The feeling itself, produced to order in an ordinary hospital room by a wire. So the experience has an address. It is not mystical. It is not a soul leaking through. It is a specific patch of tissue roughly the size of a postage stamp, and it can be switched on by somebody standing next to you with a battery. But an address is not an answer. Knowing which part of the brain makes the feeling tells you nothing about what set it off in a doorway in a foreign city, with no surgeon, no epilepsy, and no wire. For that, you need a different kind of scientist. You need somebody willing to build fake rooms. In a psychology lab in Colorado, people are put inside a virtual environment and walked in the first person through a series of completely ordinary places. A bowling alley, a cafeteria, a courtyard. Nothing happens in any of them. They are just rooms. Later, they are walked through new places they have definitely never seen. Except some of those new places are built to a secret rule, the objects are completely different, but the layout is the same. Same distances, same corners, same shape of space wearing different furniture. The subjects do not spot it. Asked directly, they cannot name the earlier room. They cannot say what the resemblance is, and most of them will tell you flatly that the new place is new. And they report more familiarity. And they report more déjà vu. The effect appears specifically when the layout matches and the original room fails to come to mind. When they do manage to remember the earlier room, the feeling collapses because then the slow system found the file and there is no contradiction left to feel. Now take that back to the room you walked into. The building is new, the street is new, the step, the corner, and the wall are all genuinely, verifiably new. The arrangement is not. Your brain does not file a room as a photograph, it files relationships. How far the wall stands from the step, what angle the corner turns at, which side the light comes from, and how tall the opening is compared to everything around it. Strip out the colors, the language, the smell, and the country, and what is left is a shape. Shapes are cheap to store, so your brain keeps an enormous number of them. There is a part of this that almost everyone reports and almost nobody mentions out loud because it sounds insane. While it is happening, you do not only feel that you have been here, you feel that you know what is about to happen next. The same Colorado lab went after that directly. They put people back into the virtual rooms, waited until déjà vu was reported, then stopped the tour at a junction and asked a simple question: which way does it turn next? The subjects were confident. Many of them said they were certain. And they were wrong at exactly the rate you would expect from guessing. Not slightly better, not a small effect that needed a bigger sample. Chance. The feeling of prediction is real. The prediction is not. And that is the single most useful fact in this entire video, because it tells you what kind of thing you are dealing with, a signal your brain generates and then hands to you as a certainty with nothing behind it. Which means the experience is not one illusion. It is one broken signal read twice, in two directions, producing two separate certainties that both feel like knowledge and are both empty. Read backwards, the familiarity signal becomes, I have been here before. Read forwards, the same signal becomes, I know what happens next. One glitch, two convictions, neither of them attached to anything. And this is a good moment to remember that the whole thing lasts about 4 seconds and then lets you go. Now, once you know the trigger is a repeated arrangement of space, a prediction falls out of it. Not a mystical one, a boring, testable, slightly uncomfortable one, and as far as we can find, nobody has gone looking for it. If the trigger is a repeated arrangement of space, then déjà vu should not be spread evenly across the world. It should pile up in exactly the places where human beings have started building the same arrangement over and over again. The hotel corridor, the airport gate, the chain coffee shop with the counter on the right and the pickup end by the window, the apartment block built from one blueprint and then built again 11 more times along the same street, the hospital wing, the school hallway, the multi-story car park. We industrialized the floor plan. Somewhere in the last century, we stopped designing buildings one at a time and started stamping them, because a repeated layout is cheaper to build, cheaper to wire, cheaper to plumb, and easier to brand. The hotel chains will tell you this proudly in their own marketing. Same bed, same wall, same lighting, anywhere on Earth. Now, honestly, nobody has run this study. There is no paper that says modern architecture manufactures déjà vu, and if anyone tells you there is, they are selling something. This is a prediction, it is not a finding. But it is the kind of prediction you can check yourself, which is more than almost any other explanation of déjà vu will ever offer you. Think back to the last 3 times it happened to you. Ask what kind of building you were standing in, not which city, what kind of building. And it does something to that third risk factor, the one we left open 6 minutes ago. Traveling. Everybody explains it the same way. Travel means novelty. Novelty means your brain is working harder and a tired, overloaded brain slips. Except think about where a traveler actually spends their hours. Airports, hotel rooms, rental apartments furnished from the same catalog, chain restaurants, transit corridors. A traveler is not moving through the most unfamiliar rooms in the world. A traveler is moving through the most duplicated rooms in the world. And then, somewhere in the last 20 years, the argument stopped being about buildings at all, because we found a much faster way to mass produce the shape of a room than actually building one. Game levels are assembled from the same asset pack, so a corridor in one world has the exact proportions of a corridor in another. Showrooms are laid out from the same catalog, interfaces are built from the same templates, and image models are trained to reproduce the most statistically common arrangement of a room, which means they output the average of every room endlessly. We are manufacturing configurations faster than we have ever manufactured buildings. So, the cafe was never really the point. Somewhere in your past, there was a room with that corner, that step, that fall of light, a relative's hallway when you were 7, a building you walked past for a year and never once looked at. It is in there. It is filed. And you will never be able to name it because it was never stored as an event. Nothing happened in it. Nobody said anything memorable. Your brain kept the shape and threw away the paperwork, which is the correct decision for almost every room you will ever stand in. The label was never written. That is not a malfunction. That is the design. In Scotland, a research team put 21 people into a brain scanner and gave them a memory task rigged to produce the feeling inside the machine. Then they watched to see which part of the brain lit up at the moment it landed. Everybody expected the memory system. That is the obvious guess. It is the guess you would make, and it is the guess the researchers made themselves. Déjà vu feels like a memory going wrong, so you look at the part of the brain that does memory. It was not the memory system. The regions that came alive were at the front of the brain, the areas that handle conflict, checking, and decisions. The part that notices when two pieces of information disagree with each other. which is not the department that makes mistakes. That is the department that catches them. It sits above the memory system, reading its output, asking one question over and over, does this add up? And on that day, in that doorway, it did not add up, and the alarm went off. Turn that over, and the entire experience inverts. Everything you have ever felt about déjà vu, that something briefly went wrong in you, that a wire crossed, that you glitched, is Déjà vu is not your memory failing, not a glitch, not a crossed wire, not a file corrupting. It is the sound of your brain running a quality check on its own output, finding a contradiction, refusing to let it through unexamined, and reporting it to you as a feeling, because a feeling is the only channel it has to reach you with. The eeriness is the alert tone. And that answers the question we left hanging in the first minute. Why it happens most between 15 and 25, and why it quietly stops as you get older. It is not that older memories become more reliable. They do not. The likeliest reading is that the checker gets quieter. A young brain audits its own output aggressively and reports every contradiction it finds. An older brain files more and questions less. So the strange feeling fades, not because the mistakes stopped, but because fewer of them are being flagged. There is a version that runs the other way, and it is worse. You are standing in your own kitchen, a kitchen you have used every day for 6 years, and for somewhere between 5 and 30 seconds, it is the kitchen of a stranger. Nothing has changed. You simply cannot get the feeling of ownership to attach to it. It has a name, and it can be produced with a pen. 94 students were asked to copy one ordinary word over and over. Around 70% of them felt it, the word coming apart in their hands, turning into a meaningless arrangement of marks, typically after about a minute, or 33 repetitions. The study won an Ig Nobel Prize in 2023. You could run it on yourself before this video ends. And there is a man who could not turn any of it off. His déjà vu stopped being an occasional strange second in a doorway and became the permanent, unbroken condition of his life. He stopped watching television, including the news, because every program was a repeat he had already seen. He stopped reading newspapers for the same reason. He became convinced that when he went outside, the same bird sang the same song in the same tree. The alarm we just called healthy had jammed in the on position, and it took his whole world with it. Which brings us to the answer everybody actually has in their head. The one from 1999, where a black cat walks past a doorway twice, and the characters explain that déjà vu means the system has changed something and reused an asset. That film is wrong about the world and almost exactly right about you. There is no simulation, but there is a system that saves effort by keeping a library of shapes and reusing them, and there is a moment where you notice the reuse and feel that something is off. Everything in that scene is correct except which machine it was describing. So, you have been here before, not in this city, not in this building, and not in any life other than the one you are currently in. You have been in its shape, and the reason it frightened you is that for 4 seconds, you were allowed to watch your own memory system working, out loud, in front of you. So the next time it lands, do not try to remember the place. You will fail. There is nothing there to remember. Try to hold the shape instead, the corner, the step, the direction of the light, and go looking in your own life for a room that matches. And one honest note, this is normal, and it is healthy. But if it starts arriving often, lasting a long time, or coming with a rising feeling in your stomach or a smell that is not there, that is the pattern worth taking to a doctor. One day soon you will walk into a room you have never been in, and it will happen again. A few seconds and then gone. And this time you will know that nothing went wrong in that moment, that something in you checked its own work, found a contradiction, and told you the only way it knows how. Somewhere in your life there is a room with that exact shape in it. Tell me where you were the last time it happened.